Ebola. You can't watch it, you can't talk about it unless you're standing right in the middle of it. You know, we sort of reached a point in the summer where it was clear this was horrific. It's the first time Ebola had started to course through an urban environment. This was madness, you know, how on earth was this going to stop? And we were thinking all this and watching it from the comfort of Canada, and I think the realization hit in this network, you know, very quickly. We have to go. No matter what it takes, we have to go. And so we began this kind of long process of figuring out how do you cover Ebola safely? Because there are only two rules. I was told this by a friend who works for Sky News, who had, you know, was an amazing woman who went very early on. She said, Adrienne, there are two rules with Ebola: do not get it and do not give it. Okay, that's very good advice.
So we also talk about even getting your nails just sort of rubbing in like that.
We had long conversations about what you wear. How do you mechanically go through the day? We talked with doctors and infectious disease specialists about tricks, like try not to raise your hands above your shoulders. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that for 10 minutes. It's actually really hard. This is a combination of bleach and water. We started to go through the daily, sort of a daily routine. You know, what do you do when you get into a car? Well, if we've made a bleach solution, so we will bleach down the car, and then we've got rubber boots because you're always stepping in the bleach to clean. And we're gonna have long sleeves so that you know, you try to avoid as much skin contact as possible. And when you talk to people, you don't try to achieve that sort of intimate distance that you normally do on a shoot. You're much further away. It makes you much more detached. So are you afraid if you get worse, it'll be too late for you?
Yeah, of course. It will be too late.
It was the strangest thing to be in a place where people can't touch each other. You know, we've talked a lot about a woman we saw on the side of the road who was trembling terribly and sweating profusely and very, very ill. And there was this big circle of people around her, and everybody knew she was gravely ill with something, but, you know, what? It sure looked like Ebola. And one man was very bravely crouching beside her and trying to give her some fluid. An ambulance had come by, but it was full, and so it left her there. I think this is horrible, you know. This is what's killing a lot of people in Liberia. It may not even be Ebola in some cases. They're just dying of other things.
When I got her, I was told her parents had passed.
Esther's story was horrific. Esther had come into an Ebola treatment center with her parents. She had slipped into a coma. She was so sick. When she awoke, she learned that her parents were dead. So Esther heals miraculously. She goes to this thing called a survivor ceremony. It's sort of a lovely little event where they get a certificate declaring them free, and the kids get a toy, and they, you know, congratulate them for so sort of heroically pulling through, and then they get to go home. And Esther was sobbing while everybody else was smiling because she was waiting with her little bag and there was no one to pick her up. And so an American NGO worker spotted this and said, I can't take it that this kid is all by herself. So was trying to find a temporary place for her until she could be settled. And so Esther was free and clear of the disease. She couldn't get it, she couldn't give it. So Esther is the one person, you know, that people could hug freely.
Hi, Esther. Hi.
And in the middle of the shoot, I sort of looked over, and JF, who is the nicest guy on the planet, is sort of crouched down, and he's showing Esther how to use the camera, which we often do with little kids, you know. They love playing with the camera and then seeing pictures of themselves. And she was actually smiling. He actually got her to smile. But his smile was like 10 times bigger because it was the one sort of moment in this really hard week where you could have that human connection with someone. A lot of people said to us who live there that they were, in a disturbing way, nostalgic for the time of the Civil War, only because they knew when they could let their guard down, and then they knew when they had to be alert. And they were enduring this low level of anxiety all the time. Did I brush by that guy too closely in the market? You know, it's raining and that woman looks ill and I helped pick her up. What's the consequence of that going to be? You know, they're dealing with no indoor plumbing. So you've got someone sick at your home. If you love someone enough to wipe the sweat off their brow and clean them up after they've been violently ill, you're the person who's most vulnerable with Ebola. So they found it especially cruel. It went right for the people who cared the most. The ones you loved the most, who would look after you in your sickest moments, are the ones who are then likely going to die. So there was this horrible grief that we sort of watched unfolding, because it matters so much to people in Liberia to be able to treat the dead with respect and to clean them and to go through these important rituals to help them get on to, you know, a good afterlife is very important. And that was snatched from them by Ebola. People were wrapped up in white bags, and these alien-looking creatures came and dragged them through the neighborhood. The whole village could see, took them away and cremated them, and they never got a chance to do their burials. And everybody else, for weeks and months after, looked at that house and said, that's the Ebola house. It is a brutal, vicious, nasty, cruel disease that doesn't have to be that bad. You know, we were so lucky compared to everybody else. When we left, there were people saying to us, do you have any extra rubber gloves? Do you have any extra rubber boots? We just sort of unloaded everything we had on the people around us, because, you know, if they got gloves, they were reusing them, which is terrifying. And so I think, you know, just watching it as an observer who goes but then has to leave, which is the hardest part of going to cover a story like that, is knowing you get on the plane and they stay. I think the hardest thing was to watch how many layers of anxiety they were dealing with.